Welcome to the show, Tell Like It Is. I'm your host, Mark Wassberg, and here's my co-host, John Mux. There's a lot of people here in Richmond, California asking why I'm running for mayor. We know for a fact that the RPA, the Richmond Progressive Alliance, controlling Richmond. Now, they've been doing this for the last 14 years. No law, interfering with police work, telling Christopher Magnus, the police chief, don't deal with ICE. Now, how can you have a government that take a note to the Constitution and telling law enforcement don't enforce the law? The RPA, my own personal opinion, is no different from the SLA, the Weather Underground. We all know what these radical groups were for. That's what they are. They are a hate radical group. They hate against big business. They hate against government. They hate against anybody who's making a good living. Say you're making $90,000 to $100,000 a year. They don't like that, John. They want to take their money and they want to give it to the poor.
Well, I wouldn't be that surprised that some of these progressives are earning that kind of money, and probably more. But
That's
they don't want
true.
anybody else getting it.
That's right. They don't want to. They don't want to tell the people that they have people in the RPA that's making out big bucks. They just want to sit there and lie and lie and lie. And actually, the board of directors on the RPA is the city council, the Richmond City Council. These people are the board of directors. They're most likely like a Democratic Party. They call themselves the Democrats, the Green Party, all these other anti-social groups that is against the federal government. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. And the people are so stupid, John. They put these people into office.
I know. It's just really sad. Of course, the whole Bay Area is primarily Democrat. Well, be that as it may.
Now, Nat Bates been on the city council since 1903. We know he has a lot of experience, and he's one of the most popular ones in Richmond on the city council. But the problem is, John, the man is 91 years old. And the problem is, I don't think he's going to finish out his first term.
He might not, and if he doesn't finish out his first term, then who's going to take over? Be the vice mayor? And who's that going to be?
It's going to be either Jimenez or Willis. And I don't think you want these people as mayor, because I tell you, John, it is going to be a disaster. See, this is what I'm worried about. Now, this guy told me that he was a peace negotiator between Israel and the Palestinians. So I told him, I said, okay, then why they keep on fighting each other? And he looked at me. He didn't say a word. He didn't know what to say, John. I said, you got to be kidding me, pal. He goes, no, I'm serious. I said, John, these people have been fighting since biblical times. I mean, what makes him so popular and strong that he's going to do what the two governments can't do?
There's still violence going on today, so how much good has he done? Is that his reputation, that he brought peace between Israel and everybody else?
Now, if he runs this on a campaign, people are going to laugh at him. Well, actually, Tom Butt ran on the RPA ticket. Believe it or not, it's true, people. He took a picture with the RPA, him and Bernie Sanders, this anarchist person in Congress, who was out there living with his daddy, his parents, almost all his life, and was getting people on welfare. See, this is the kind of people that the RPA has sponsored for him. Now, Eduardo Martinez. Now, Eduardo Martinez has been on the RPA for the last, 12 years now on the city council. Now, this guy is one of the most stupidest idiots I have ever seen in my entire life. He'll sit there and look at be in the city council meeting. He goes, what'd you say? Gee, I forgot. I forgot what you said. Because actually, Tom Butt always has to interpret what people are saying. Now, he wants to make Richmond a welfare city. We all know for a fact that the RPA wants to go ahead and tax the big businesses and give it to the poor. Because this is why you have this city bank that the RPA is conjuring up. What they're doing is they're taking the taxpayers' money and they convert it in this nonprofit bank. So the people could go to this bank and get out money. If they want to buy a car, they could go out and give them, $20,000. And they're going to give the poor people, the illegal immigrants, they'll open up their own bank accounts. And you're going to have organized crime. They're going to come in and open up their own bank accounts.
That may very well be true to an extent, but based on my experience with government programs, the only ones that benefit from government programs are the elite. They know how to work the system. They're the ones that get in there. They're the ones receiving political favor. If you have a bank run by the city, that's what's going to happen. You don't want a bank run by the city. You want a bank run by we, the people.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, what they're doing is 100% illegal, because you can't take taxpayers' money, divert it to a nonprofit bank, and give it to private citizens. This is what they're going to do. They're going to be buying property. They're going to be buying these items that people just going to walk in there and get say about a $500 loan, which you don't have to pay it back, because the problem is you cannot make a profit.
It's worse than that. The only people that are qualified to run banks are bankers. And the only ones that really do great corruption in society are bankers. So it's a lose-lose situation. You don't want that. You want a banker, you want a bank run by we, the people, with good fiduciary oversight, so that the bank loans don't go sour.
Well, the only problem is there's no overhead, John. There's no oversight.
Well, then obviously this is a bad idea and it should be voted down.
It's like the savings and loan scam. It's almost exact same thing. Now, we know for a fact that I think it was around about the early 2004 and 5 and 6, that the city council tried to implement the soda tax. What they did was they wanted to tax soda to stop the people from drinking it. Yep. But actually what they did is they brought in the children. And said, oh, look, we're for the children. We need to stop the children drinking this stuff. This is why we're going to triple the tax on it. But what gives the government the right to get involved and telling us American citizens that the government says, well, you can't drink this, you can't eat that. We're going to raise the taxes. But there's some foods that the government has the right to regulate.
The same government that tells you you must be vaxxed, the same government that tells you you must practice social distancing, you can't go to college unless you've been vaxxed, you can't go do this, you can't do that, you can't go to church unless you've been vaxxed, and even at then you have to remain 6 feet apart. That government that has only itself as its main interest, not you, not we the people.
Well, we know for a fact that the RPA was getting involved in police work, telling the police not to enforce the law. Because during the heyday of the violence, they had the police checkpoints, right? So what happened was the illegal immigrants were getting caught up in the checkpoints and getting their vehicles towed away and getting fined. So what happened was they started complaining. Since John Marquez was on the city council, they went to John Marquez and for the Latino community, told the police chief, either you stop the checkpoints or you're going to be out of a job. So what happened was the police chief stopped the checkpoints. Then it was the city council, Gil McLaughlin said it was a good thing for people driving illegally. Mm-hmm. I mean, how can you have a stabilized government that took a note to the Constitution, and yet you have government defunding the police and hating the police?
One that wants to remain, one that's in the take from somebody else. Now, I don't know who these other people are, but somebody is paying these politicians that says, look at, you vote to reduce the budget for the police department by 11%, not 12%, not 10%, 11%.
Matter of fact, Richmond is down 50% because of defunding the police. All this, after the Floyd incident, we all know that all the Democratic cities want to defund the police. I mean, this is getting dumb. And now they're going to have social workers going in there. What are you going to do? Have them come down and when somebody's stealing your catalytic converter, you're going to call a social worker or somebody with a knife going to stab somebody, talk about mental illness? Oh, you can't arrest him. You can't do anything because he has mental illness.
Well, it's a sad day in Richmond to see this happening like this. And another issue you should probably bring up, and that is all these stores that have been shut down for stupid reasons. All the people that are leaving the state, and Richmond's not helping.
And now we know for a fact they came up with this eminent domain. We all know that the real estate scam was happening here in 2008, and
Yep.
and what happened was the city council come up with a plan. Say, well, just sign your property over to us. You see what I'm saying? We'll take care of your property. We'll make sure the bank is not going to get your property. And it was just a scam. See, this is why it never went through, because you have to go to court to see somebody's property.
That's
If I stand corrected.
That's correct. You have to take it through eminent domain, and that's frequently, I don't know if all the time, it frequently involves court process. It's a mess. The bottom line is you have a house that you inherited or bought, and the government's going to come right in and take it away from you whether you like it or not, and give you market value, so they say.
Well, the city of Richmond had no plans of giving these homeowners value market. Now they came up with another scam called TOPA. TOPA was designed where you had a third party to go in and evaluate the people's property for sale.
TOPA will change all that. TOPA will remove the pride of ownership, because there will be no point to maintaining or upgrading property that will essentially be seized. TOPA will remove the purpose of investing in this city. Again, because there will be no point to investing money and energy if there's no return on investment. We were considering putting a granny unit behind a rental house to make it a duplex. Now, for sure, we're not going to do that. Richmond will need a new slogan. I don't want that slogan to be Richmond, the armpit of the East Bay. I don't want to live in an armpit. My guess is you don't want to live in an armpit. So no on TOPA. And Jael needs to recuse himself because of a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alana Clark. I am here speaking on behalf of all Richmond residents and on behalf of the Association of United Richmond Housing Providers. 2 weeks ago, I told you how TOPA takes protections from eviction away from renters. It also takes rent control protections away. Section 14, should the maximum allowable rent provision of the city's rent program will no longer apply. Obviously, TOPA is terrible for renters. Blocking sales and mandating low sale prices doesn't benefit housing providers. Who does TOPA benefit? The third parties named in this act will clean up. So will the lawyers, specifically the East Bay Community Law Center, which employs JL. This is a huge conflict of interest, and this is why JL must recuse himself completely from this issue, not to vote on it, not to speak on it, and not to try to influence other council members on this issue. Thank you.
In other words, your home's worth about $400,000. They will come in and devaluate your home and say, well, it's only worth $150,000 to $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
So what they wanted to do is, they're going to sell the homes cheap and have the poor people buy the homes. See, this is what the plan is. This is what the RPA is doing. They want to take away from the rich and give to the poor. Even Gil McLaughlin admitted it. Well, we're out here to protect the poor people. All you people out there has to go out and work every day, put up with the garbage at work, travel, and then the city government's just going to say, hey, just give me your money, and then we'll just give it to the poor.
Why should I save my money to buy myself a nice house of my dream, and then just to have it taken away by the city? There's no sense at working at all, is there? I might as well just
work for nothing. You're working for nothing.
Right.
See, this is why I'm running for mayor, because I know how to beat the RPA. I know how to go around the RPA. I don't have to have their permission to do stuff. All I have to do is sign an executive order, and I take it to federal court. Look, John, if the president could go around Congress, if the governor could go around the legislature, I could go around the RPA. I could go around the city council.
You better be able to. And who runs the RPA anyway? What who are the directors that tells the RPA what they're made of and what rules you have to follow?
Gail McLaughlin. Gail McLaughlin is head of the RPA. She's spearheading the RPA. It's just the anti-political hate group.
And what business experience does Gail McLaughlin have? Does she have anything to put on a resume?
Yeah,
Something positive?
Well, I don't know what anything positive you could tell about Gail McLaughlin. I know she came out of a mental institution. She's certified by the state of California for being a psycho.
I wonder if she learned anything by being in a mental institution.
And then she got into the Green Party, and then she got in the RPA, and then she became on the city council, then she ran for mayor. And she'd been mayor for 8 years, and ever since then, Richmond had the highest homicide rates ever.
I don't want to besmirch those who need psychiatric help. God bless them. But really, if that's the only thing you're going to put on your CV, well, it's a sad day in Richmond. That's all I can say. That's real sad.
But she's trying to act like she's out for the people. We're here to support the people.
She may be, but
we're
she's not
going to help
it.
the people. You realize if you put Eduardo Martinez as mayor, it's just be like Gail McLaughlin all over again. You will have a homeless campment on every street corner. And this is what they're doing. I went down to Riders Road. It's not a homeless campment. All they have is vehicles lined up almost a whole entire block long. Nothing but abandoned vehicles. They had 72 calls for the Richmond PD. This one guy caught a motorhome on fire, and then they made this law. The RPA, the city council made a law that you cannot be evicted from that camp. And then they got another camp down at Castro. I went down there, took videos of both of them. John, it's a mess. All they are is a breeding ground for criminals. That's it. That's all they do.
Then what they ought to do is set up a tent right on front of Eduardo Martinez's front lawn and squat. And maybe he'll start singing a different tune.
Well,
We've had enough of this crime and violence. We've had enough of this pandering to people who don't earn anything.
Well, see, that's what they want to do. Now they say, well, I got mental illness. I don't buy that stuff, man. Anybody could walk around the street, put a blanket over their head and say, well, I got mental illness. Or they could just sit there all day at a park, or they could just sit there on the street corner just staring in the world and say, well, I got mental illness. I can see in some cases, like if a woman got severe raped and beaten, or people were in war and suffered post-traumatic syndrome. I can see something like that, but just because I don't want to go out and work, I don't want to go out and better my life, that I have mental illness.
Yeah, they're malingering. They're catering to whatever is going to bring them the most money, and what brings them the most money is welfare, government handouts. So they act a little more cuckoo than maybe they would otherwise. It's just sad. That's all I can say. And if they need help, they can go get help, and then try to be a productive element of society. God help me to pick on them just because they had a problem. All of us have had problems. For heaven's sakes, get over it.
But they don't want to. Matter of fact, there was this guy who was walking naked down 23rd Street, right?
Yeah.
So this one guy called it in, and so what happened was, I seen him walking down there, and I flagged the cop down. I said, well, he went down Nickel Parkway there, and he's naked, so you better be careful. And she was a female cop of all cops. She kind of smiled. Then there was this another guy standing on the corner masturbating. Right out in public, masturbating. That the RPA is going to have to go, John. I mean, just like I said before, you cannot have a government that hates the police. The bottom line, people, we cannot have Richmond be a welfare city. I want as mayor, if you make me mayor, I want Richmond to be an economic powerhouse. I want people to work, to have a job skill, because the more people have jobs, the less crime you have. We need to bring back the police so we can have some type of justice. Because right now, Richmond PD is 50% below the average of having cops here. Right now, the Richmond PD is working 18 hours a day. In 2019, Richmond, California was sued by a lawyer and the Latino community to implement district voting. In other words, the Latino community wanted to have these districts where they have the majority of vote rigged up for them.
Of creating the majority Latino district. Well, you need to adopt the majority Latino district, which is fairly well defined.
The city council, the RPA, draws up these maps. These people are the one that's going to okay these maps, John. They're going to implement these maps. And they do not want any competition between each council member. So what they're doing is they're shuffling each city council member in different districts, so they won't compete against each other. And they know for a fact that the Latino community will control the majority of these votes. I mean, my own personal opinion, John, this is rigged. I mean, how can anybody be so dumb, not even admitting that this stuff is rigged? Now, it's not a legal issue, but it's an ethnic issue. Because what they're doing is they're keeping other people from voting.
Well, it seems perfectly clear to me from your description that this whole thing has to do with rigging elections, whether you call it legal or illegal. If only the Richmond progressives get on, if only certain groups get on, but if you want to run, you have little chance of making it. That's as rigged as you can get.
Well, they know for a fact that they're going to win the election. They know for a fact that the Latino community will outvote the majority of the whites, the African Americans, the Asians, and all the other ethnic groups, John. And they know it, and this is what this city council has done. Now, they had an outside independent company to come in here in Richmond to go ahead and figure out which maps should be implemented. You know, you have this neighborhood over here is going to be over here. This neighborhood is going to be over here. And what they're doing is, now according to these people that have been calling on the open forum, say, well, you're going to mess up our neighborhood. It's not going to mess up the neighborhood because you're still going to be on the same street. You're still going to have the same address. You're still going to have the same neighbor. But the problem is it's all rigged up for the Latino community to have the majority of the vote, John. This is not right at all.
No, it isn't. It should be one man, one vote, period, regardless of wherever you live in Richmond. And you should be able to vote in every election.
But the problem is there's some people that cannot vote within 6 years. You can't do it, John.
I know.
And they talk about discrimination back in the 50s where they couldn't let the African Americans vote.
Yeah, well, that's...
Come on, people.
It's a lot can change in 6 years. We could have a pandemic, we could have a war, we could have a drought, we could have all kinds of things happen in 6 years. That's too long. That's way too long, in my estimation.
And
we need to change that.
As a matter of fact, they implemented a map where they destroyed 6,000 votes.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where this is going. And no matter how you slice and dice a map like this, it's never going to come out right. You're never going to take care of everybody completely right. It's just not going to happen. The best way is just let everybody vote no matter what. Because
the problem is, under the law on district voting, you have to have 14% of each race. In other words, you got to have 14% whites, African Americans, Latinos, Asians, stuff like that, which they know is never going to happen, John. It's impossible for you to have 14% of a race on every district. It's not going to happen.
I know that. And they have these districts like this. The districts are just too small for that kind of thing. Because I live in a district which is mostly one ethnic group. You probably live in one that's a little different. Who knows?
Now,
we should all vote the same regardless.
Now if you come to Richmond, say like you're from Berkeley or El Cerrito or out of state, you come here to Richmond and you stay here for 2 days, according to the RPA, Richmond City Council, you are a resident. And what they're going to do is they're going to give these people fraudulent IDs with no background checks. They're just going to walk into somewhere, into an office, implemented by the city council, and they're just going to say, okay, who are you? They're just going to write out an ID. They say, okay, you are a resident. Now you can vote.
Well, that's awful. Can I walk into San Francisco or Berkeley and live there for 2 days in a hotel somewhere or out on the street and says, I'm a resident, I'd like a ballot, please?
This is what they're going to do, John, because the city council, the RPA, they want to ensure that they still have the control of the city government. They will do anything they can to keep their people in office.
Well, in that case, I can go register. If this was, Bay Area wide, I could go to the whole Bay Area, every city, and stay there for 2 days and get registered to vote in every city in the Bay Area. How about that?
And everybody's calling on the open forum. They're complaining about district voting, but the people who want this voting is mostly the majority of the Latino community, because they know they outvote the majority of the people.
Yeah, well.
Because like I say, about 7-8 years ago, Robert Rogers, who works for John Joya, he did a survey. And he said the majority of the people that live in the Iron Triangle, which is central Richmond, the south side, and north Richmond, do not vote. And we all know that high crime areas don't vote.
That's right.
And he did a survey, and he was right. But the people just didn't want to admit it. This is what I was trying to tell the people. They say, Mark, you don't know what you're talking about. You come on the open forum, you just, yelling and screaming, you ain't making no sense. But some people are finally realizing on what's going on with this district voting.
Yeah, well, it's awful. And John Joya is right about that, because I did my own survey many years ago, and I found that one year that only like 12 people, something like that, voted in the Iron Triangle. It was so low, it was just like, you might as well just forget about them. No wonder the politicians don't come to find out what our problems are.